Helldivers 2 is a crazy addictive co-op shooter where you partner with 3 other players to eliminate enemies and complete objectives. By now, you've probably seen all of the montages, all the explosions, and the gorgeous cinematography and graphics. So you decide to buy the game, queue up, and pick the hardest difficulty, because who wants to play a mode called Trivial anyways? You drop into your first game, but instead of experiencing everything you've seen on YouTube and TikTok, you're constantly getting overwhelmed by the number of enemies and swarms, and you're sick and tired of seeing these death screens over and over again. As someone who has played this game far too much and has grinded for every single possible war bond, stratagem, and weapon, I've learned how to play this game and how not to play this game. What? So here are my top tips for Helldive and Super Helldive, so that you can see more of this at the end of your missions. Let's get into it. Tip number 1 is to pick the right booster. Helldivers 2 is a co-op game, so on Helldive difficulties, you need to be able to synergize with your teammates. And the easiest way to do so is to pick the right booster. There are a bunch of booster options, but there are really only a few that are viable on Helldive. The 3 essential boosters that every squad should run are Health Pod Optimization, Vitality Enhancement, and Stamina Enhancement. The 4th booster can be anything you like. I recommend Localization Confusion for defense missions to reduce the amount of enemies that spawn in, and Experimental Infusion for all the other missions for the extra stamina boost and healing. Without these boosters, the game just feels way too hard to play, and you'll find yourself struggling during missions. Tip number 2 is to prioritize easy-to-use heavy weapons and stratagems. Choose heavy weapons that don't require too much precision, like the autocannon. This weapon has a huge hitbox, and it also has a stagger effect that knocks back enemies if you shoot anywhere remotely close to them. With the most recent update, it even has a flak option that lets you effectively take out patrols or swarming enemies if you just shoot in their general direction. You can also take out heavy units if you aim at their weak spots. Here you can see that the Impaler only takes 4 shots to the face to kill, and if you aim at the head of a Battle Titan or the butt of a charger, you'll be able to finish them off after 5 or so shots. Another great heavy weapon is a recoilless rifle. It's a one-hit delete button on most heavies, and you don't have to be precise. Like the autocannon, just aim in a general direction and delete whatever it is that's chasing you. It can even knock out entire dropships if you aim at the center of them, and it's great for destroying fabricators from a distance. On the stratagem side, choose stratagems that have a large margin of error, like the orbital rail cannon. If you're getting hunted down by a heavy unit, drop the stratagem and it'll automatically aim and kill the largest unit next to you. 500 kg bombs are also a great choice, especially in Helldive. Random patrols will spawn in front of you. Instead of engaging them and potentially triggering multiple breaches or bug drops, throw a stun grenade to keep them in place and call a 500 kg to wipe them out. It's the cleanest way to deal with hordes, and you're able to save your supplies as you move on towards the next objective. Tip number 3 is offense is always better than defense. Shield generators and Tesla towers are good stratagems. They're definitely useful during extraction missions or defense missions, but they're hard to place and can have a low payoff if placed incorrectly. Similarly, shield packs and EMS strikes are good for absorbing damage, but generally you should choose to deal damage instead of mitigating it. Choose more aggressive options like turrets and backpack slots that deal damage rather than protect you from it. Use turrets to kill enemies and to provide cover as you move towards an objective. Just remember to call turrets down in the direction you want them to fire so that they start shooting at enemies immediately when deployed. Aggressive backpack slots like the laser guard dog or even the regular guard dog help kill enemies that get too close to you. If you don't clear enemies that are already aggroed on you, you'll quickly get overwhelmed and will end up burning through a bunch of reinforcements just trying to fight your way out. Always deal damage instead of running away from it. Tip number 4 is to use orbitals to destroy objectives. When dealing with heavy nests or bases, the most effective way to clear them is to drop an orbital barrage like a 380 or a 120. This isn't a hand-to-hand combat game, and for most enemies, you want to be able to keep your distance. Why run straight into hordes of enemies when you can soften them up first with your stratagems and then move in afterwards? In this clip, 2 orbitals cleared out 8 of the 10 bug holes and a majority of the enemies. which makes your job much easier. This is another one of those stratagems where accuracy doesn't really matter. Throw the orbitals at whatever's in your way and it'll clear them out within 10 seconds. Better yet, if your teammates have orbitals as well, layer them by throwing them together, and you can easily clear out bases without shooting a single bullet. That was probably the easiest way to clear out a base. Tip number 5 is the dive. Super Helldive spawns a ridiculous amount of enemies, and getting overwhelmed at some point in the game is normal. But when the 50th bug breach or bot drop happens right next to you, dive away from enemies instead of sprinting away. I found that you get hit much less if you just spam dive because you're putting more distance between you and whatever it is that's trying to shoot you. Diving is also really helpful in throwing stratagems. When engaging from a distance, diving before throwing the stratagem can increase your throw distance by a good amount, and it's easier to break line of sight when enemies aggro on top of you. In this clip, I had no right surviving for as long as I did, but diving allowed me to dodge a lot of the bullets, and if I just sprinted away, I would have died much earlier. Especially on the bot front, there's always a little bit of lag time when they aim at you, so if you dive, you're able to avoid the majority of the bullets that they send out at the start of their magazine. Tip number 6 is to bring the appropriate primaries based on the faction you're going to fight. On the bot and bug front, use weapons with medium armor pen or stagger. On the bot side, I would recommend either the Diligence Counter Sniper or the Jar 5 because of their accuracy and long range. On the bug side, I would recommend the Adjudicator or the Arc Blitzer. Both weapons can be panic fired when you're swamped and have enough damage to pop the head off of the medium armor enemies. Guns like the Sickle are great with their infinite ammo and fire rate, but there are better options on both the bot and bug front. There are too many enemies where if you just take a light armor pen weapon, you won't be able to make a dent. The worst thing that could happen is you're getting hunted down by biospheres and you just keep on seeing this little deflection symbol. It's just easier to use a gun that can deal damage on most of the enemies without too much effort. For the Illuminate, bring weapons with a high rate of fire and an aggressive backpack slot like the Laser Guard Dog. The Sickle actually shines here because you can mow down the hordes and rely on the Guard Dog to burn through some of the medium armor enemies. The rapid rate of fire makes sure that you don't get touched, and the Guard Dog helps pick off any stragglers. Tip number 7 is to expect to be overwhelmed. Super Helldive is supposed to be hard. Random patrols will spawn out of nowhere, 4 or 5 bot drops will happen, and bug breaches will pop out of nowhere. You will die, you'll be reinforced, and you'll probably die again. And that's okay. Every Super Helldive game I've played had at least 10 minutes of pure chaos, and that's by design. It's normal. Try not to flame your teammates too much and keep pushing through. The XP, medals, and samples will be worth it. That's all I had for this video. Thank you very much for watching. This took way too long to make, and let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next one.